let us continue. All right, so awareness of how sound works benefits both the storyteller and the educator and the producer and the student and the person, and frankly, in some ways, I would also say the audience. Again, you don't analyze it while you're watching it, but when you walk out afterwards, you go, wow, that was great. And I would argue that film buffs, the people who analyse films and live and breathe films, probably get more enjoyment out of it because afterwards they walk out and they have an appreciation of exactly what went into making it. And this is kind of what I'm trying to sort of give you a bit of an introduction to today. This is what I've been trying to do within the industry that I've worked in for over 10 years, which is the game industry, of jumping up and down and yelling at people and saying, the better your sound is, the better your project will be. And I've had people turn around and say, oh yeah, but you know, if we've got the best sound in the world, it's not going to make a AAA game title. And I turn to them and say, yes, but you find me a AAA game title that doesn't have brilliant sound and brilliant visuals and brilliant narrative and brilliant design. You don't make a Porsche or a Rolls Royce by gluing plastic mirrors on the side. Every single aspect of that production is top quality. And if you're going to make a title and you want to actually put the label of AAA on it, every single aspect of that production needs to be top quality. So from my point of view, I try to encourage people to think that way about the audio. As far as being an educator or a storyteller, these are tools that are available for you. The better you know how to use them, hopefully they'll be an advantage to you. Okay, that was a very short, very simple scene. The visuals depict a single dinosaur. Simple. Dinosaur, we saw a little bit of, you know, the dinosaur walks, dinosaur climbs up onto a rock, and it opens its mouth. We assume some sound's coming out. The thing is that without the sound, there's obviously something missing. We're expecting, oh, there should be a call from the dinosaur. Maybe we should be able to hear its footsteps. But exactly what are we missing when we don't have the sound going? Let's try it again. Now, I was actually given that clip by somebody I was working with. This is actually over 10 years ago, I think. We were working on a Jurassic Park game, and he'd made a dinosaur, and he likes always doing higher res renders of his dinosaurs, and he just did this thing with the dinosaur climbing onto the rock. He said, oh, can you whack in the sound of the dinosaur doing its call? I said, sure, and some other things. And it's up to me at that point of view, at that point in time, as a sound designer, to work out what is going on here. What more can I bring to the story? And one of the things I've found quite often is working with animators. Animators quite often just like to animate. And they actually don't think much beyond that. Quite often, they don't want to tell a story. They just want to do a little animation. And he thought that he was telling a story there of a creature walking onto a rock and calling. And I sort of said, well, what's it calling for? And he said, oh, no, it's just calling. I thought, all right. So I added the sound of a river, which is not in the picture at all. And it's fairly quiet. I reinforced the idea of the river being there by the dinosaur's footsteps are actually on large pebbles. I could have made him walking on, or actually it's a she, I could have made her walking on gravel or leaves, solid rock, but I thought, well, no, I've placed a river there in my mind, so I'm going to highlight that by having the movement of large pebbles. I even added the sound of when the dinosaur climbs up onto the rock, there's a little bit of debris that comes away. These are details that are not important from one point of view, but can make so much difference when you pay attention to them. The birds in the trees, well, that gives you something that's, you know, it gives a little bit of life to the environment. However, when the dinosaur calls, you get the flutter of wings as the bird's taking off because the birds are startled. Again, adding another element to the story. There's no visuals of this happening. And then the last thing I did was the realization when I was working on the game and trying to work out the behavior of dinosaurs and the sorts of calls and stuff, and observing herd animals. That particular dinosaur is an Tyrannosaurus, which is a herbivore. Herd animals communicate for a couple of reasons, the same way humans do. They communicate because they're talking to others of the same species, same family group, same herd group. So a dinosaur climbing onto a rock and going, "Arr!" Unless it's stubbed its toe, there's some reason why it's doing that. And that's probably that it's trying to communicate with somebody else. So I added the sound of the rest of the herd off screen calling back. Now there's so many elements, and you could add more and more elements to that, but there's so many elements that you could add to any scene that's not depicted in the scene. And in fact, you could completely shift and change the story. Now, there's nothing in that particular scene there of when it's going on. I could add the sound of a helicopter to it, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, it's not in the Jurassic era, it's in the modern era, and maybe it's being hunted. Maybe when you hear the call, I put in voices going, oh, there it is over there, quick, get the nets. Completely changes the entire narrative. Haven't had to touch the visuals at all. You could probably tell 20, 30, 50, 100 different stories with that tiny little 20-second clip just by altering the narrative. And this is what I mean by things that the audience will never see. So, this is what I'm trying to get across to you. Think beyond what you can see. Think beyond what's just depicted on the screen. And in fact, perhaps look at some TV or some film and stuff like that and pay attention to what you can hear that isn't on the screen. What's going on in the background that you hear it and you go, oh yeah, there's a helicopter there. Did they ever show you with a helicopter? They've saved themselves a huge budget. They haven't had to go out and hire a very expensive helicopter. They just put it in. They just put in the sound. And you're all sitting there hearing a helicopter and going, there's a helicopter there. So there's a sound effect. I've put up the thought that perhaps it's a hideously deformed monster. Or now, sadly, that was Edgar, and sadly Edgar is no longer with us. Edgar is actually was being looked after by a lovely woman out in Willowmaven who started an entire animal sanctuary pretty much to save Edgar. Those two sounds are both from Edgar. I have in my library, and seriously, do a search in my library for Edgar. I've named all the sounds with his name. I have literally dozens of sounds of Edgar, and they've been used for everything from a lion roar to a demon coming out of hell. And this is one of the other things that most people think: cat, meow, pig, oink. We recently bought a kitten, and I can tell you the kitten's vocabulary, it's now about 6 months old, the vocabulary from that one animal is far more extensive than most people would think. And it's the same with a lot of animals. So again, we are dealing with perceptions rather than reality. And so if I actually had gotten that first sound and shown the visuals of a giant demon, you'd be like, wow, you made a fantastic sound effect there. Like, how did you mix it together? And how did you create it? It's like, I just recorded a happy pig.